Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So there's a mayoralty election going on in Mississauga right now. The by-election is being held on June the 10th. And this week there's two different debates that have excluded people. There's a debate on Monday that is organized by a Port Credit Residents Association and another one on Tuesday organized by a Mississauga Residents Association that have excluded some candidates, myself and Sinisa Mandrapa, who has joined me today, and a couple of other that we're going to try to plug in later to have a discussion about what's important to Mississauga in this mayoralty campaign and a little bit of background about themselves. And I thought this was appropriate given that these residents associations, in a really sort of undemocratic way, have decided to exclude some of the candidates, and they've got, really unjustified, I think, reasons for their exclusion. One of them is just, well, we organized it early, and even though it was long before the expiration of the registration opportunity for candidates to register for mayor, they arbitrarily decided that those were the people that they wanted to invite because they had to come up with a brochure. That everyone knew when the date was that the registrations would close, and they could have easily amended their invite list and or their invite publications, but they chose not to, and only out of 20 candidates invite 8. And the other Residents Association hasn't even been able to respond to me as to what the rationale was for their undemocratic exclusion. So I think it's completely inappropriate, and I thought Sinisa and some others deserve a little bit of exposure. And so I thought I'd invite on today Sinisa Mandrapa, who is a candidate for mayor of Mississauga, and find out a little bit about who he is, what he's all about, and what he stands for. Sinisa, welcome to the show, sir.
Welcome to the show, Brian. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm really appreciative of this, and I want to take a second to thank you for this. And I too believe exactly as you're saying that this is a little bit undemocratic. I think we should have an equal chance in a democracy, especially the fact that we're voting. Maybe because it's a constitutional democracy, but aside from this, I have some points that I would like to do from my side. I'd like to address, and I'd like to point out to people, if possible. So I'd like to talk a little bit about housing and affordability and availability.
Sure. Well, why don't you start out by telling us a bit about you and your background?
Sure. Okay. So my background is where I was born.
Just why you think you'd be, what's your background that such that you think you would make a good mayor?
Okay, so my background is I'm a real estate broker, mortgage broker, and a licensed immigration consultant. And I've been following politics, world events, local events since I was a kid. Not only politics, but also scientific from all around the world. When I watch, I like to read around the whole world. I like to stay in touch with all the news, media, and all the new intuitivity and innovations that are happening around it's all our society. So basically, I think that we need to look at what is positive and what works in certain areas and implement that in Mississauga, because Mississauga, I think, is a little bit lacking in the fact that we've changed a great lot in these past years. We have 802 plus population, and we're still kind of backwards, just as if it's like 250,000 people. So I think that we need to see what's happening around the world, what works, and bring that here and actually expand on that in order to help us reach a level of a North American city or even a world city where events can be demonstrated going from our city to other places in the world.
So what do you think we need to do to elevate ourselves into that sort of category of a true sizable North American city?
So in order to join that category, I think that some of the things that are in crisis, like housing and affordability, reducing property taxes, I think our safety needs to improve. From my point of view, I think that like our whole way of government needs to change, because if somebody's contacting the mayor or a councillor, they need to be able to get in touch. This whole era of making an appointment and calling in, I think there needs to be a mayor's office. So if you'd like to make an appointment, you make an appointment that day in the mayor's house, and like you could go over and meet the mayor. You could go talk, chat. You could see what you'd like to bring.
These so more accessibility.
Yeah, definitely more transparency. I think that we need to have meetings like Bonnie Crombie used to call the house sometimes every few months, and there was like a like a call, and then like a robocall, and then everybody would, some people would get in. But I think that needs to be a little bit more expanded. It needs to be all the wards put together, and maybe we have like a meeting if we had an arena. So if you had like an arena, we could have a meeting as a city, and people that would like to address problems come out and communicate at the same time.
So I do
And
think that democracy is a challenge right now municipally, and I think our turnout, down around 20%, maybe 25%, really is indicative of how people have lost confidence in their municipal governments. Turnout for federal and provincial is down as well, but municipal even more so. And I think it's a couple of reasons. I think number one, people just don't understand what the relevance of our municipal government is, which is a real shame because it's the closest government to, what we do day in and day out. It's water, it's sewage, it's garbage, it's parking, it's schools, it's community centers, it's the roads, it's the things that really, interact with us on a day in and day out basis, the city government. And I think number two, it's that the power of incumbency, because there's no political parties, which I think is a good idea, but the power of incumbency is so great that people don't think they can actually have a chance to change an election. Their vote doesn't really count. And I think that that's a big issue. And so I'm a real believer, I think, in your point about town halls. I think that's helpful. But I think referendum would be great. And, we had this issue this past 2 years in regards to the separation of Mississauga from Peel, which it turns out I don't think that there was much, if any, analysis done to begin with that would suggest it was either a right decision or a wrong decision. It was just sort of a decision that may have had some populist appeal. That's the perfect thing that, should have gone to a referendum. Something so material. And, it turns out, according to some reports that Patrick Brown commissioned, the mayor of Brampton, that it would have cost Mississauga taxpayers $1.5 billion. Something's going to cost that kind of money. You know what? You need some analysis done. You need some debate about it. And I think a referendum would have been completely appropriate. And you could have done that referendum at the same time as you had an election, so it didn't have any incremental cost. I think that recall, you see all the interest right now in this recall potential of the mayor of Calgary. You know what? You even threaten a recall. People smarten up real quick. And I think, therefore, the power of recall, which we don't have in Mississauga, I think would be really smart. And then I think really the most important thing is having an opportunity for constituents, for residents, taxpayers to have more influence. And I think your idea of a town hall might make a lot of sense. I happen to believe that, having some sort of a system, whether it be via robocall or through an app or something where people can vote on specific items. And, we have development issues all around Mississauga. Too often, the only people that end up getting to voice their points of view are the local residents that get upset and want to say no. And there's this new movement of not just NIMBYs, but yes bees, people that do want things to happen. And I think that if you had a online app that allowed people to express their point of view or vote on a major development, wouldn't do this for all the small ones, but for a major development, such that the whole community could have a point of view, not just the loud, squeaky voices in a certain area. Anyway, I think you're right. Democracy is something that we need to add some oomph to make our democracy more democratic.
Yes, definitely, Bonnie Crombie. I hope you read some of these things off my site. So one of my points would be enhanced democracy. And for example, in Switzerland, they have referendums, like you're saying, from 2010 or 2010, 2011. They have referendums every few years, every few months, depending on what the
Switzerland has a referendum every year.
Yeah,
and have for decades and decades, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that would work better because the Hazel McCallion Act for the dissolution of Peel, nobody really talks about it and what it's going to bring, how it's going to bring. But another point I'd like to address is like you're saying, I read about you and about your future, about your past, and about your party affiliation. And yeah, I think that there isn't too many parties in Canada, but I think that our system is centralized. It's very centralized. They'll definitely need more parties, but I think that it's exposure, right? Because then the main shows that we watch, the main CTV, CP24, and these channels, these news channels would have to air it to make it. So I don't know if that would push it push to have like people sign signatures so that that could go to the communications director, and then he could address this by having equal.
We need more media. There's no
Yeah, media is
question. The
definitely
lack of media
one.
in Mississauga is a real problem. There's 4 daily newspapers in Toronto. There's numerous different radio and television, and we just don't have that in Mississauga. That's a real problem. I had the pleasure of listening to you on Friday at the debate, and you spoke passionately about affordability and it being a challenge. Tell me a little bit about your policies there, what you think the problem is, and what you think we need to do.
So for affordability, I believe that this is actually destroying our city and the integrity of our city, because even before COVID-19, well, Canada does have one of the highest GDP to loan rates in the world when looking at IMF. This is a big problem for all of Canada. But if we're looking at affordability directly in Mississauga, there's more to look than just Mississauga. But we will focus just on Mississauga. So in Mississauga, the whole footprint of our existence in our real estate market is basically that it's been going up substantially over the past 10 years to about three and a half, 4 times fold that it was. So I would like to tackle it. There's certain things that can be changed and can't be changed by municipal government. So what I would change, what is the possibility of changing would be to build more public housing so that people wouldn't have to move away. So we would have to find areas, for example, maybe in Malton, maybe some areas that 5 and 10, somewhere where it's not over congested, but even where it's congested, we're turning it to a city. It's going to be congested if we continue at this pace. If we don't make radical changes, it's going to continue. Like, so we would have to have sensors for the lights and everything else to kill the congestion, but we need more high-paying jobs. So the average $24 or so per hour for in Mississauga, the average, that's not sufficient enough unless you have a really big down payment. So if you have a really big down payment, you might be able to buy and to sell. I do mortgages, so you might be able to buy and sell, but it's very hard when you put the numbers together because the average home is about 1.3 by Statistics Mississauga off the site, and the average condo is about 600 or so, 500, 600, 700, depending on what part of the city. And putting this into perspective is that it's super hard for a single person, for a young single person. It's super hard unless you get your parents to pay you or someone else to pay you. So the main thing would have to be to increase jobs. In order to increase jobs, I'd like to bring in more businesses, and I'd like to make incentives for businesses, small businesses, and also try to attract more Fortune 500 businesses. So for example, in the Meadowvale, there's about 60 Fortune 500. In all of Mississauga, a little bit over 70. And there's global 500 companies too. So we need to attract the businesses that are going to give the highest output, so our new generation could buy the homes that are. We're not talking about in Mississauga. We're not talking about everyone having a custom home. There's some areas that have custom homes. We're talking about people just having a regular home. So this is the problem that we're getting into. I would also like to reduce property taxes in order to give people a little bit of a leeway, so about 5% or so, something to help them offset all the costs. And
so I think that your attention on affordability is really, really important. And I think that the city council, I think, has been the major reason why our housing prices have gone up the way they have. And people don't like it when I suggest that, but it's the truth. CMHC, Stats Canada have done analyses that say that we are in Canada one of the worst, if not the worst countries in the Western world in regards to approval time periods. And Toronto, Mississauga, Victoria, and Vancouver are the worst amongst that. And everyone I speak with in the development industry says that Mississauga is one of the slowest. It takes 5 to 7 years to get an approval to build a building or a development, and it takes 2 to 3 years to build it. So it takes 2 to 3 times as long to get the review and approval from the city as it does to actually build it. And when you think about buying the land and the interest accumulation on that land and all the development costs, etc., it becomes uneconomic with this extra weight and reacting to market changes. You got to wait another 5 years if you're going to change the size of the condo or the style of the condo or the height of the condo. And it's city council that is in charge of putting this system in place and or changing it. And I think that that city councilors have done a massive disservice to the current residents and, more importantly, the future residents of Mississauga, because the people that get hurt the most are young people that want to buy a home, renters that want to get out of rental and get into a home, newcomers to our community, and people that want to move into our community because they get priced out of the marketplace, such that Mississauga today, I don't think, is affordable for anyone in the 30s and 40s, unless, as you say, they got real help on their down payment and their mortgage payments from their parents, or they win a lottery. And I worry that it's becoming sort of the Manhattanization of maybe not all of Mississauga, but parts of Mississauga where it becomes unaffordable. And I just don't think that we've got the attention from our city councilors on the processes that they've put in place and a planning system that they allow to exist that has created a situation where we're doing something like 1/5 of the starts that the province has allocated out to us. 1/5. Our record here is just abysmal. I do think that your attention on Fortune 500 companies and other companies and the economics makes a ton of sense. The one way to keep property taxes down is to have a commercial tax base. And that's what Toronto has done so successfully. The commercial tax base in Toronto has allowed Toronto to keep their residential tax rates based on market value at 50% of what it is in Mississauga. So their city council and their, downtown business core and other industrial, areas have been able to keep their taxes down. Well, why can't we do that? As you said, we got 50 Fortune 500 companies. We got the airport corporate zone. We've got industrial and commercial here. We should be doing more of it to keep our taxes down. Sinisa, tell me, in conclusion, why do you think people should vote for you?
So I just have one question just to add for the streamlined approvals. I've written all this on my site. I think we should definitely have streamlined approvals, and basically about a developer spends on average 42,000 for the approval, and that's ridiculous to have years to fix this. So basically, in order to have the streamlined approvals, this would be like a generated system, an application made, and it would go through much faster because looking at the blueprint, the aerial footage, the soil, and everything else put together, a computer is going to get the answer much faster. But I wouldn't disqualify humans. I would still have a human or two humans do a check, and that would create higher jobs too, because then there would be maintenance for the job of the computer. There would be maintenance for the job of the software. So the individuals before that were maybe working but not working as hard, they could go to school for a few months or for half a year or 1 year and then be getting a much higher paid job. They would a job that's about 30-40% higher paid, and we could actually streamline everything, and even permits, house permits. I think that all of these things need to be going at a much faster pace because we're in 2024. And there's a lot of technology and a lot of smart individuals, and we need to pinpoint this and bring this to our city and put it together. And so I have a lot more to talk about this, but you asked me why people should vote for me.
Why should people vote for you?
I really am looking to change a lot of things. I'd like to be a people's mayor. So I'd like to have an office where people could come in and they could actually come communicate with me at any time, and we solve problems, even if they want to just come for a conversation, including my house. I don't have any problems with anybody passing by or coming to knock. All of these things wouldn't really cause that too much of a problem. I would like to change a lot of the infrastructure of Mississauga. Before, there was talks about building a subway, and it didn't happen. Hazel McKellen was saying this isn't a blue collar city, this a white collar city. Well, I don't really have anything against blue collar people, and I just want to let people know that I think that we do need we need a subway, and I have about 6 points that in how to build, what to build, what all the effects, all my research that I've done for building a city. So I had that ready to say, and then I think that we also need to do a lot more things. Just the economic stimulus. We need to address homelessness. So in the housing, there's people being homeless, and some people are moving away. So I would put that in the field of homelessness too, because if you move away to rent somewhere else and you had something here, you're not really.
You're not getting a home here. You're not being able to afford a home here. Tell people what's your website? Where should people go if they want to check you out?
My website is www.mandrapafor mayor.com. So www.mandrapa for mayor. And my phone number is 647-207-7474. Thank you very much.
Sinisa Mandrapa, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. We're going to take a break and come back with another candidate for mayor in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody.